Welcome to Your Life is the Medicine, episode 16. I'm Sonny Miles, your host. Thank you for being here. I want to tell you a little bit more just about my year today. So I turned 46 at the end of April, and I promptly got sick and sort of have been in this fog of being sick and trying to do all of the things, all of the necessary things. And I'm sort of this week coming back to the clarity and having my energy return. And I went to Northern Colorado's Small Business Development Center hosts a conference called Unstoppable. So I went to a small business conference on Wednesday and really just got to sit and kind of reflect on my own growth as an entrepreneur. And so this episode is going to be kind of sharing my reflections on my growth as a human, as a woman, as an entrepreneur. And I'm just kind of playing today. So I'm going to light a candle because when I start my women's circles, we always start by kind of creating a sacred space. And that's partly what I love to do. So I am, if you are watching the video, you can see I'm lighting a candle. If you're not, and if you're driving or listening to the audio, I lit a beautiful candle from the Love and Light Company. And whenever I light a candle, it's really with gratitude for light and the element of fire, right? And we have our own internal fire, our own internal light, and sort of using the light of the candle both to honor the light in the world and also to honor that light within myself. And so I am appreciative of the light that the candle brings to our time to get today. I'm also going to pick a card, which I haven't done here before. The card that I picked, I'm using today a deck called the Medicine Woman Oracle cards from Catherine Maillard. I'm holding up the cover. So the Medicine Woman Oracle cards from Catherine Maillard. And I really love this deck. I have a lot of decks. But the card that I chose is number 1, and it says intuition. Intuition is the messenger of your destiny. Follow it. And it's a picture of a cat with wings and prominent display of the heart center kind of over the third eye. And that feels very fitting. So I'm going to start with a quote. And I've done a lot of work, and I really, a couple of years ago, fell in love with the Labyrinth. And I was introduced to the Labyrinth when I was pregnant with my first kiddo, and I did a birthing, I think it's called Birthing Within class or Birthing from Within. Anyway, they talk about the myth of Inanna and this kind of descent into the underworld and then the return. So one of the teachings in this class was using the myth of Inanna and the descent into the underworld, and this using the metaphor of childbirth sort of being this descent, or this descent isn't the right word, this journey deep inside yourself. And then when you come out on the other side, you're not the same person that you were when you entered the journey and the labyrinth. And so I had to have a C-section because my little guy was breech and did not want to turn. And my husband and I, we lived in San Diego at the time. We went to, it's making me emotional. We went to the beach the day before my scheduled C-section, and we drew a labyrinth in the sand and walked it together. And it was just such a beautiful, moving moment of how we were journeying together. And when my second kiddo was born, we had moved to Colorado at that time. And so we went and found a labyrinth at a church in Boulder, and we went and walked the labyrinth together again. And the labyrinth really has been part of my journey since then. When I worked in the cancer center here in Loveland at Banner, there's a labyrinth right outside, and I would frequently go walk that labyrinth. And I have found several other labyrinths in Loveland, and I don't walk them as frequently as I used to, but they're a part of me. And the teacher that I work with teaches sort of a cosmovision from Don Oscar Miro Quesada, the Pachacuti Mesa. I think it's called the Pachacuti Mesa cross-cultural shamanism. And that is a spiral. And so when we work with the altar and the directions, it is a spiral inward. So not as convoluted perhaps, or as many twists and turns as a labyrinth, but it's that same idea of really journeying inward to the center, to our authentic selves, to our truth, to our souls. And so this is a quote that I really love about the labyrinth. And this is the foreword of a book called The Way of the Labyrinth by Helen Curry. And the foreword is by Jean Houston or Houston. I don't know how she pronounces her name. It has been one of the pleasures of my life to offer the gift of the labyrinth to others. What is the nature of that gift? It seems to me to encompass a journey to the center of one's very being. During the walk inward, with its many surprising and disconcerting turns, one is invited to release old patterns, worn-out ideas and concepts, debilitating emotional memories, unhappy behaviors. Arriving at the center, the journeyer is asked to experience the recovery of her innate, purposeful intelligence, one's essence. Spend time, if desired, at the center, the still point, and know that at very deep levels, one is in union with the greatest mystery. The center point experience can range from a sense of becoming lighter, literally enlightened, to a mystical aha. Sometimes the joy is in silence or a feeling of the mind-body system being rewired. One enters the doorway of a different reality almost beyond words. For me, the great work of the labyrinth is the challenge to leave the center point and return outward to perform deep, loving service to the world, carrying the gifts and knowings of this visit to the heart of things. I encourage you to read The Way of the Labyrinth as a remembrance, as if you were remembering something that you once knew. For the labyrinth not only invites you in, the labyrinth can welcome you back to who and what you really are. I think that's the journey of our becoming, of our growth and wisdom, is the journey deeper and deeper into our own authenticity. And my own experience, and I think this is true for many women, if not many men and women, is that there was so much conditioning from my family, from society, from, school, that I was a very adaptable kid. I wanted to perform. I wanted to please people. I wanted to be what people wanted me to be. And so there were so many layers of having become who I thought I was supposed to be as I journeyed through childhood, young adulthood, early adulthood. And my journey in my 30s and 40s has been, and mostly in my 40s, has been really about that journey towards center, right? It has been about releasing. It has been about grieving. It has been about raging. It has been about becoming lighter and knowing myself so much more intimately than I ever did. And the coming out, right? It's not that we take one journey into the labyrinth and then we come back out. It is a process simultaneously of constantly releasing and constantly integrating and bringing that back into the world. And sometimes, yes, we set aside a period of time, like we go to a retreat and we get to journey inward and be at the center point, and then we journey outward and bring what we learned or what we discovered or what the next layer of becoming out into the world. But in everyday life, this process, as we do work, as we reflect on ourselves, as we reflect on our life, as we reflect on interactions, that journey of releasing and harvesting and integrating and sharing with the world is all happening at the same time. And so that's been my real work in my 40s is really becoming who I am, being brave enough to be who I am, being brave enough to light a candle and read you a card as a physician, because that wasn't what a physician was supposed to be. I was supposed to really stick to evidence-based medicine, never say anything I couldn't back up with a million articles, only be professional, scientific, all the adjectives, right? As a physician, it wasn't about becoming actually me. It wasn't about understanding the Pachacuti Mesa and that cosmovision. It wasn't about integrating Chinese medicine and the understanding of that. And it wasn't about nervous system regulation or anything else, essential oils, anything else that I love, right? And so that has been my journey in my 40s. And as I was reading The Gap and the Gain, or listening to it on my way to work, and I had started this book a couple of years ago and listened to like literally just the first chapter, and that was helpful. And then I just sort of set it aside and did other things. And I came back to it recently, and I've been listening to it on my way to the hospital, the days I work in the hospital, because I have about a 50-minute commute. So it's good listening time. And it's really been powerful for me. It's really been powerful to understand how the gap and the gain shows up in all different places in my life. And so the premise of the gap and the gain is that often we set some sort of ideal goal, and we measure the gap between where we are now and this ideal goal. And maybe we make it, because it's an ideal goal, oftentimes we can't ever actually get there. But oftentimes we keep changing the goal. Waited for the sirens to pass. Or we keep changing the goal and moving the goal post further and further forward. And so when we stand here and say the goal is this far ahead of me and I still haven't made it, that's the gap. That's like what we haven't gotten, what we haven't done. Often it's like, what's wrong with us? Whereas the gain is like looking back, like maybe I haven't made it as far as I wanted, but look at all that I've done. And in the book, they really present a lot of the evidence of how being in the gain, like measuring our wins, measuring our progress, celebrating our progress, how that helps us really build and have even more success. Whereas being in the gap, like constantly focusing on what we don't have and what we haven't done, doesn't help us get better, and it makes us unhappy. Whereas being in the gain helps us to be self-efficacious, helps us to really learn to measure our own success instead of depending on other people's definitions of success, helps us be happy and kind of feel abundance in our lives. And so I've been listening to The Gap and the Gain, and the chapter that I was listening to this week, he asks you and he talks you through looking back at all of your wins over the last 10 years. And if I really look back at my life 10 years ago, in 2016, I had finished residency in 2013, and I went to work at Gallup Indian Medical Center for Indian Health Services as a hospital. And I learned so much there, and I am so grateful for that experience. And I had a lot of bad experiences there too, and a lot of experiences where I was told that I wasn't a team player, didn't help enough, that my work wasn't even valid. As an example, at one point, somebody tried to say that any time that we worked in the evenings as hospitalists didn't count, that only our daytime hours counted. And so I was very burnt out and very unhappy by the time I left at the end of 2015. And so in 2016, I was doing locums hospital medicine at small hospitals in Arizona and New Mexico. I was getting ready to start palliative care fellowship. I had already started the University of Arizona Integrative Medicine Fellowship, and I was about halfway through that. I was in a beautiful relationship with my now husband. We were living in Gallup, New Mexico, and I love New Mexico. I had 5 horses then, and I was so excited about next steps, but I still believed that if I worked hard enough and I found the right people and I found the right job, that I would be valued by the healthcare system that I worked for for the same things that I valued about me. And which was partly being thorough and really listening to patients and really being present. And that really isn't valued by the system. And so then my accomplishments, I finished palliative care fellowship. I finished my integrative medicine fellowship. I had my oldest child. We had a beautiful couple of years in San Diego, moved to Colorado. I took a job as a medical director of a small inpatient palliative care team. I really grew in my skills, both as a leader and as a clinician. I had all of my internal medicine skills, and now I had these other two toolkits of palliative medicine and integrative medicine to sort of start adding and figuring out how I did all of the things. I had my second little guy when I was 39, and my job got changed, and I fought the contract and again was told that I was asking for too much. I was too much. I wasn't moldable enough, essentially. And so I left and I took a different job. So those are my accomplishments from my 30s, finishing all of my training, getting married, again, having 2 beautiful babies, moving to Colorado, which is, I love Colorado, and really growing as a clinician, as a physician in the healthcare system. And then in my 40s, I had taken another palliative care job doing some integrative oncology, but primarily palliative oncology. And the work was really meaningful. I still am so humbled by the patients that I got to care for during those 2 years. And so I have so many memories of people, which is a different story. But so I grew, I kept growing, and I kept adding tools to my toolkit. I did some medical acupuncture training. I did Lissa Rankin's Whole Health Medical Institute and began to use my understanding of internal family systems to how patients were struggling and how I could help them understand how they were struggling and why they were struggling. Like, I just kept growing, and yet I still felt that I wasn't valued by the people that I worked for. I was valued by my colleagues, but not the people that I really worked for. And I was very professionally isolated, and I was burnt out. And I was talking, I've said this before, but I was having these meaningful, profound conversations with people about how they wanted to live their lives if time was short. And I had 4 horses at home that I couldn't do anything with because I didn't have the time or the bandwidth. I had 2 little loved ones at home that I was trying to take care of. I couldn't exercise regularly. I didn't eat as well as I wanted to. Like, I didn't have anything to take care of me, and I didn't have as much joy as I wanted either, because I just was surviving. I was so tired. And so took me a long time. It took me many years of thinking about it, but I finally got brave enough to step out of the healthcare system. Wasn't brave enough to leave fully. So I found this part-time position that I still have that allows me to do conventional palliative care, which I love, but then has allowed me to really build my life in a very different way. And so my accomplishments of my 40s feel very undone. I am building this integrative medicine practice. I am figuring out who I am as a healer. I have shed many of the ideas of what I have to be as a physician. They still come up from time to time, like, "Ooh, is that okay? I'm a physician. Is it okay that I say that or do that? Or is what I'm doing really medicine?" And it absolutely is. It's just not the medicine. It's not medicine in the way that I was taught. And so, every day I keep trying to have a better relationship with myself, with my kids, with my partner. I keep trying to, you can, health and healing and medicine, you can absolutely dedicate many lifetimes to learning. You'll never learn it all. And I keep trying to learn as much as I can and put the pieces together for myself and my patients. And so my accomplishments over the last 10 years have been big. In The Gap and the Gain, he walks you through, like, what are your wins for the last 3 years and what are your wins for the last 1 year? And I would say, I'm not going to do the 3 years for the sake of time, but my biggest accomplishment over the last 1 year has been how much better my relationship with myself has become. And a lot of that is the work I've done with Dr. Amanda Hansen. I have a whole team of people that are resources and teachers and people who have absolutely shaped my life in profound ways. But the work that I've really been committed to has been understanding as a woman how I got so kind of twisted up and disconnected from myself and ended up in this place where I did everything I was supposed to. I was the straight A student. I was the valedictorian. I graduated from MIT. I have 3 board certifications. I did all of the things, and yet I felt unhappy and unseen and unable to keep up with all of the things in my life and unable to access the things that I really wanted, like to be able to ride my horses. And so that's what I'm most proud of over the last year. That's my biggest accomplishment, is this relationship with myself. And coming back to the beginning, when I said that some of this is around entrepreneurship, stepping out of the healthcare system and starting my own business has been a parallel journey of becoming myself. Because when I first started my practice, the only model of medicine that I had is the one I saw in hospitals and clinics in corporate medicine. And so when I first started my practice, my idea of what it would look like was much more similar to a corporate practice. And in the 3+ years since, it is so different. And now I have beautiful spaces that I love that reflect nature. I bring up all of the things. I have learned to trust my own intuition when I sit with a patient, and I bring up what comes up for me as an offering, right? This is the offering from my intuition, and you use your intuition to see if it's the right thing for you right now. But my practice has become much more intuitive, much more fluid and flowing, and much deeper and more connected and more relational and more healing for me and my patients. And so that's that journey of entrepreneurship, of over and over having to say, like, how do I do this? Who am I in this situation? What is holding me back? That's the journey that's helped me become more deeply who I am as well, and really reflect on who I want to be. Like, what is the most expansive, most authentic version of myself? And that's the question I keep asking. What is the most authentic, expanded version of me? And it will keep evolving, but I'm so excited to find out and to try to become that next version. And so I'm going to leave you with this offering of these same reflective exercises from The Gap and the Gain. And looking back at the last 10 years with your journal, or just thinking about it, thinking about who were you 10 years ago? How did you measure success 10 years ago? What mattered to you 10 years ago? What were you focused on 10 years ago? And what were your biggest accomplishments in the last 10 years? And what do you know now that you didn't know then? And I'll answer that last one because I haven't. And I really know that I have to take radical responsibility for my own happiness. I have to see myself. I can't wait for anyone else to see me or value me. I have to see and value myself more than anyone else in the world. Like, I have to have my own back every step of the way. And of course, there's wobbles. Of course, there's places I don't do that very well, but to keep coming back to that. And then after you've done that for 10 years, thinking about the last 3 years. Who were you 3 years ago? What have been your greatest accomplishments since then? What do you know now that you didn't know 3 years ago? What were you focused on then? And then you can do the same thing for a year ago. Like, who were you a year ago? What do you know now that you didn't know a year ago? What have been your biggest wins over the last year? And you can even do this for the last 90 days. So who were you 90 days ago? What do you know now that you didn't know then? What have been your biggest accomplishments in the last 90 days? One of mine is that I hosted a sacred renewal, which was my first day-long retreat here in Loveland. I'm so profoundly grateful for each of the women that trusted me, that came. It was a beautiful, beautiful space. And I'm so excited to say that I booked the next one with Sunrise Ranch for September 18th. So more details to follow for a fall retreat called A Sacred Pause. And so I will leave you again, and I'm going to reread the very end of the quote again. The labyrinth not only invites you in, the labyrinth can welcome you back to who and what you really are. And if this at all resonated with you, please leave a review, please follow or subscribe. And I would love to hear who you are now. Like, what is that most expanded version of you? Like, how, as you have lived, as you have done your own work, how have you become more of the person you've always been underneath all of the conditioning, or more of the person you were meant to be without all the conditioning? One of the things Dr. Amanda Hansen said in one of our calls that I just loved is something like, who is the little girl underneath the rubble of the patriarchy? Like, who were you before you got told who to be? And what does that version look like now? So thank you. I send you so much love and so much gratitude for you being here. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.